What's up, guys? Knowledge is self-determination. It is Saturday, November the 9th. And I think maybe a day and a half, 2 days ago, I heard the story about the brother from Texas who actually made an atmospheric water machine. It basically pulls, and people are saying, it makes water out of thin air, which is implying that it's making water out of nothing, which isn't the case. That's what people usually mean by thin air. Thin air is just the air. The air is, well, if you actually understood what the atmospheric pressure was, you probably wouldn't think the air was so thin, but there are water particles floating throughout the air, and the machine basically pulls water particles from out of the atmosphere, I'm assuming, collects them, that it probably filters the water because, our air is polluted, and provides clean, fresh, renewable source of water that uses the air itself to pull water molecules out of and creates drinkable water for humans. It's brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Now, if you go onto Google and search Flint Man makes water machine, he's actually not from Flint. I should have been more accurate when I said Texas. Flint is just one of the most popular places where he's done this, because we all know the water situation in Flint. And I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube which prompted me to actually make this video, because I didn't know about it until I heard about it on YouTube. This is brilliant stuff. So let's go ahead and check out some videos
who brought
of this.
clean water to Flint, Michigan, now says he wants to help out in the Bahamas. Do you remember Moses West? He's the guy that designed this machine that can take moisture, condensation from the air, and turn it into drinking water. He's raising money, he says, to get this machine to the Bahamas. Now, that's where Hurricane Dorian just decimated entire islands in that island string. Without power or running water, that's how they've been left.
This is a long-term recovery for the people there. And one of the stressors that they do not need to have is the lack of clean water.
West says that the warmer the air, the better that machine works. So he thinks the Bahamas are going to be an ideal place to put that that technology to work. He hopes to get it there by the end of the month. Of course, it was needed yesterday, right? But very nice of him to try to get that there.
So, as you can see, this brother is doing great things for people everywhere that need water, and this is an example of a person who is basically showing the best of us as humans. He's showing the best of us. But now let's look at the flip side of this whole situation.
A water machine in Flint, which makes water from the atmosphere, was vandalized. For safety precautions, 500 plus gallons of water had to be unloaded from the machine. The atmospheric water generator on Saginaw Street was from a base in Texas. Moses West, he's a veteran who travels the country with the machine. He tells us what happened.
Repairable things. They let out the coolant. I think they changed the frequency on the frequency inverter. They damaged the onboard generator, and so we're using external generators right now. And all this is done by donations through the Water Rescue Foundation.
West even had tech support on standby while he talked with us. He hopes to have the machine back up and running very soon.
So, as you guys can see, the man's machine was vandalized. And listen to what he says in particular about the vandalism of this machine as soon as the video plays.
They added something to the coolant lines. They played with electronics. And that's not typical vandal stuff.
Less than a week after bringing free water to Flint, Moses West says the green machine he designed to do just that was vandalized.
Once they broke into the machine and they destroyed the generator, very technical, they knew what they were doing. It wasn't just, random vandalism, not at all. They destroyed the battery, they put metal in the fuel system. I saw that when I was cleaning the fuel filter.
West is a military veteran who travels across the country to areas in crisis, bringing a machine he designed, like this one, that literally makes fresh water out of thin air. He put the green machine out for people along Saginaw Street on Thursday and was hoping to make a big impact. He says before the vandalism, they were giving hundreds of people free water every day.
You got to look at, I'm making anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 gallons of water a day and giving away for free. That's a lot of money out of somebody's pocket someplace.
West says that he can only speculate as to why someone would try to destroy something that was just trying to help the community. West says he hopes to have the green machine back open and working again soon, with some anti-vandalism features added as well.
It actually sits in the air. I set it on the ground because the ground was a little bit unstable for it to sit on the legs, but now I've got all support for the legs. All 21,000 pounds, though, it'll sit up in the air and make it harder for people to get to do devious things to the machine.
In Flint, Rachel McCrary,
So, again, as you guys can hear, as you guys see, once again, black people are doing their best, showing our true nature, our benevolence, creating a machine that gives people free water. He's going around the country, wherever this machine is needed, helping people out. It's amazing what our strength can do, what our ingenuity, our creativity can do. It's amazing, in the face of such staunch racism, bigotry, and bias, our people still find a way to come through and still show America that we're still good people and we're still willing to help. It's amazing. It's amazing that we continue to do these things. Why do we continue to do these things? Why do we not take our intellectual properties and everything that we own and create, pull those things together, pull those intellectual resources together, and keep our shit for ourselves, keep our stuff in our communities? Because that's what everybody else does, right? That's what everybody else does. But see what's happening to this brother this is not something that is new. This isn't something that is unknown to black people. This is what white supremacy does to black people. This is what it does to us. This is what it has always done. Every single time we get to a point where we are separated from white people and we take our futures, our destiny, our lives into our economics, our culture, into our own hands, white people cannot handle that shit. They don't want to be anywhere near us. They actually want us gone off the fucking planet. So that's the most extreme of wanting to be separate from us. So separate that we're no longer on the planet. But yet they can't fucking stay away from us. Because the Tulsa incident was occurring during the Jim Crow era, where we were segregated. It was legal segregation. Black people couldn't be here. Black people couldn't do this. Black people couldn't sit there, eat there, walk there, drink there, shit there, piss there. We couldn't wash our hands there. You know what I'm saying? So we were separate. We were in our communities. You had your communities. And even when we had ours, you motherfuckers had to take what we had. But notice, like, especially with Tulsa, Oklahoma, why did they destroy Tulsa, Oklahoma? They used the excuse of a white woman being touched, which I gotta tell you, I don't know what this fascination is about protecting their women from black men, because white women are not that fucking appealing. Let's just get that on the table right now. Sorry, but no. Sorry. But anyway. But that was just the excuse that they needed to raid. Anyway, why am I talking about it? Let's go through this history. I hope you guys have time. If not, just go ahead and switch the video off now. But this this channel was not for the short attention span, the goldfish brains. You know how they say goldfish have a 3 second fucking memory? Well, a lot of you motherfuckers got a 3 second attention span. So if you want to learn some shit, stay tuned. If not, go watch World Star videos and old ladies getting punched in the head by suckers and shit. That's what's entertaining nowadays. Anyway, The Atlanta Race Riots, 1906. When the Civil War ended, African Americans in Atlanta began entering the realm of politics, establishing businesses, and gaining notoriety as a social class. Increasing tensions between black wage workers and the white elite began to grow, and ill feelings were further exacerbated when blacks gained more civil rights, including the right to vote. The tensions exploded during the gubernatorial election of 1906, in which M. Hoke Smith and Clark Howell competed for the Democratic nomination. The gubernatorial, that's basically running for governor, if you didn't already know. Both candidates were looking for ways to disenfranchise African American voters because they each felt that the black vote could throw the election to the other candidate. Hoke Smith was a former publisher of the Atlanta Journal, and Clark Howell was the editor of the Atlanta Constitution. Both candidates used their influence to incite white voters to help spread the fear that whites may not be able to maintain the current social order. The Atlanta Georgian and the Atlanta News began publishing stories about white women being molested and raped by black men. These allegations were reported multiple times and were largely false. On September 22nd, 1906, Atlanta newspapers reported 4 alleged assaults on local white women. Soon, some 10,000 white men and boys began gathering, beating, and stabbing blacks. It is estimated that there were between 25 and 40 African American deaths. It was confirmed that there were only 2 white deaths. Okay? And this is just over. Now, it didn't take much to get white people to that point, but it's the same now, mind you, notice what the reoccurring theme is in a lot of these stories. Just bear with us. Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, May 31st, May 31st through June 1st, 1921. During the oil boom of the 1910s, the area of northeast Oklahoma around Tulsa flourished, including the Greenwood neighborhood, which came to be known as the Black Wall Street. The area was home to several lawyers, realtors, doctors, and prominent black businessmen, many of them millionaires. Greenwood boasted a variety of thriving businesses such as grocery stores, clothing stores, barbershops, banks, hotels, cafes, movie theaters, 2 newspapers, and many contemporary homes. Greenwood residents enjoyed many luxuries that their white neighbors did not, including indoor plumbing and a remarkable school system. The dollar circulated 36 to 100 times, sometimes taking a year for currency to leave the community. Did you guys hear that? 36 to 100 times. Our money circulated more in our community then than any other race's money circulates in their community now. We didn't need shit from anybody then. Well, the brothers and sisters in Tulsa, Oklahoma didn't need anything from anybody. That is what we can do when we work together and practice group economics. And notice how the system has changed dramatically to keep us from being able to do these things. But ultimately, let's continue to read on. I don't want to break this up with too many interruptions. The neighborhood was destroyed during a riot that broke out after a group of men from Greenwood attempted to protect a black man from a lynch mob. On the night of May 31st, 1921, a mob called for the lynching of Dick Rowland, a black man who shined shoes, after reports spread that on the previous day he had assaulted Sarah Page, a white woman, in the elevator she operated in a downtown building. In the early morning hours of June 1st, 1921, Black Tulsa was looted, firebombed from the air, and burned down by white rioters. The government declared martial law, and the National Guard troops arrived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Of course, it doesn't say Oklahoma there. Guardsmen assisted firemen in putting out fires, removed abducted African Americans from the hands of white vigilantes, and imprisoned all black Tulsans not already confined into a prison camp at the convention hall and the fairgrounds for as long as 8 days. In the wake of the violence, 35 city blocks lay in charred ruins, Over 800 people were treated for injuries, and estimated 300 deaths occurred. 300 deaths. Now, now for some reason, well, not for some reason, but I have maybe under the misperception, but I've heard the opposite, that the black man was the one who was operating the elevator. But nevertheless, again, second instance of a riot on a black community, and again, what was used to incite that riot? The assault, the assault of a white woman, right? Now, mind you, this is at the beginning, the turn of the 20th century. This is when did the first version of Birth of a Nation that was put out by the by racist white supremacists, which incited the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan to be even bigger and stronger than what it was, and that's part of their plan going on. The Ku Klux Klan was never eradicated. What white society did was encourage these people to go into politics, law, government. You understand what I'm saying? But not that it wasn't always like that in the first place. But those hoods aren't gone. They've just traded them in for a suit and tie. And they still got the hood too. But let's continue on. The Red Summer of 1919 marked the culmination. In fact, I'm sorry. Here we go. The Birth of a Nation. Originally called the Klansman. Hey, how about that? Was released on February 1915. 1915. Yep. And if we go back, which page are we on now? Page 2. 1915. 1906. That shit was already being worked on by that time. Anyway, 1906. Let's see. And then we get 1921. This is well after the Birth of a Nation had been released. So anyway, the Red Summer of 1919 marked the culmination of steadily growing tensions surrounding the Great Migration of African Americans from the rural South to the cities of the North during World War I. Chicago was one of the northern cities that experienced violent race riots during that period. Drawn by the city's meatpacking houses, railway companies, and steel mills, the African American population in Chicago skyrocketed from 44,000 in 1910 to 235,000 in 1930. When the war ended in the late 1918s, thousands of white servicemen returned home from fighting in Europe to find that their jobs in factories, warehouses, and mills had been filled by newly arrived Southern blacks or immigrants. Now, mind you, black veterans were coming home too. Let's not get that shit fucking twisted. On July 27th, 1919, an African American teenager drowned in Lake Michigan after he challenged the unofficial segregation of Chicago's benches and was stoned by a group of white youths. His death and the police refusal to arrest the men who caused it sparked a week of race rioting between black and white Chicagoans, with black neighborhoods receiving the worst of the damage. When the riots ended on August 3rd, 15 whites and 23 blacks had been killed and more than 500 people injured. And an additional 1,000 black families had lost their homes when they were torched by rioters. President Woodrow Wilson castigated the white car as the aggressor. President Woodrow Wilson castigated the white race as the aggressor in the Chicago uprising. So basically, white people drove to black neighborhoods and started riots. Black people fought back. You know what I'm saying? White people got their asses kicked just as good as we got our asses kicked. Black people fought back because white people decided to ride on black towns, right? Decided to ride on us and shit. This one didn't have anything to do with a white woman, but I wouldn't be surprised if you dig hard enough that you would find something. Rosewood Massacre, 1923. Now, that was actually a movie made about the Rosewood Massacre called Rosewood. Ving Rhames played the protagonist in that movie, and those kind of movies really do spark something in you if you're black. Like it really does get a rise out of you to see that kind of stuff, to know that this is your history in this country. Rosewood was a quite self-sufficient whistle stop on the Seaboard Airline Railway in Florida. By 1900, the population in Rosewood had become predominantly African American. Some people farmed or worked in, I just got a notification. Sorry, worked in local businesses, including a sawmill in nearby Sumner, a predominantly white town. In 1920, Rosewood blacks had 3 churches, a school, a large Masonic hall, turpentine mill, a sugarcane mill, a basketball team, and a general store. A second one was white owned. The village had about 2 dozen plank 2-story homes, some other small houses, as well as several small unoccupied plank structures. Spurred by unsupported accusations that a white woman in Sumner had been beaten and possibly raped by a black drifter, white men from a number of nearby towns lynched a Rosewood resident. When the black citizens defended themselves against further attack, several hundred whites combed the countryside, hunting black people and burning almost every structure in Rosewood. Survivors hid for several days in nearby swamps and were evacuated by train and car to larger towns. Although state and local authorities were aware of the violence, they made no arrests for the activities in Rosewood. At least 6 blacks and 2 whites were killed, and the town was abandoned by black residents during the attacks. None ever returned. Now, what I didn't explain in that Tulsa article, is that once Tulsa, Oklahoma was burned down and all the buildings were rebuilt, see what they did was because they were burned down, they fireproofed the buildings, which made the buildings even more expensive.
When I noticed my sister moving differently.
Get the fuck out of here with that dumbass shit. What they did was they made the buildings so expensive that the black people couldn't afford to lease the buildings anymore. And because all of their wealth had been stolen, they doubly couldn't afford so Tulsa, Oklahoma, those 35 blocks never returned back to their prominence. Those black people never regained the prominence that they had, thanks to white people. Washington, D.C. Now, this isn't necessarily in the greatest chronological order. Maybe it's in order from I guess the most severe, I suppose. I don't know. Washington, D.C. race riots, 1919. Post-war Washington, D.C., roughly 75% white, was a racial tinderbox. Housing was in short supply and jobs so scarce that ex-doughboys in uniform panhandled alongside Pennsylvania Avenue. However, Washington's black community was then the largest and most prosperous in the country, with a small but impressive upper class of teachers, ministers, lawyers, and businessmen concentrated in the LeDroit Park neighborhood near Howard University. Another common theme in all of this is that you have cities that are being occupied by poor white people and poor black people, right? The poor black people, because we know what our struggles were from slavery, and we've always been taught to work and have a good work ethic. We worked hard. We lived in our segregated communities. We supported each other. That's why our communities became prominent, self-sufficient, and built wealth, because we kept our money in our communities. We worked, we had applicable skills that we could actually use. See, white people were so fucking lazy from slavery, they didn't do any work, which is why their asses were so poor. They wanted somebody to take care of them. And since slavery was over, they no longer had that free labor. And they didn't have the fucking skills that we had because they weren't raised to have skills. They were raised to put our skills to work. So on the one hand, you got poor black people who worked their way up to prominence. On the other hand, you got poor white people who don't do a fucking thing but want somebody else to work for them, which is why their communities were shit and ours weren't. They didn't have indoor plumbing because they didn't build their houses to have indoor plumbing. Guarantee you, most of those houses in Tulsa, Oklahoma, were built by black people and built with the plumbing inside. So there are a couple of themes here: the jealousy and envy of black people, of white people towards black people, and the constant lying about white women being so desirable that black men are just assaulting them. Again, I have to say, white women are not that fucking desirable. And then when you take off their clothes, it's even less so. Moving forward, by the time the Red Summer was underway, unemployed whites bitterly envied the relatively few blacks who were fortunate enough to procure low-level government jobs. Many whites also resented the influx of African Americans into previously segregated neighborhoods around Capitol Hill, Foggy Bottom, and the old downtown. Now, white people, we're seeing kind of a reoccurrence of this thing now with the influx of Mexican and quote-unquote Hispanic Latino immigrants coming to the country. You know, they're taking what little manufacturing and manual labor jobs that are left. Black people are getting booted out of those jobs just so these rich businessmen can save money by paying these poor immigrant Latino motherfuckers scraps. And the white people who don't have jobs are angry about that now. Right? You already seen a dude go down to, what was it, El Paso? Went into a largely Mexican community with a fucking AK-47 and started killing people in the fucking Walmart. Yeah. They're doing the same See, this is what white people have always done. They sit on their asses, they don't do shit, don't contribute shit, get mad when you actually do something, get mad at the government when they don't back them and support them and just hand them everything. They lose their shit, they get guns or numbers, and they go crazy and start killing people. Like, as you read the history and then contrast it with today's time, it's almost as I don't see how you don't see the contrast. I don't see how people can't even compare these. It's the same shit that white people have done over and over again. They're doing a lot of the same shit. Anyway, in July 1919, white men, many in military uniforms, responded to the rumored arrest of a black man for rape with 4 days of mob violence. For rape. Again, you see? They rioted, randomly beat black people on the street, and pulled others off streetcars in attacks. When police refused to intervene, the black population fought back. Troops tried to restore order as the city closed saloons and theaters to discourage assemblies. When the violence ended, 15 people had died, 10 whites, including 2 police officers, and 5 African Americans. 50 people were seriously wounded and another 100 less severely wounded. It was one of the few times when white fatalities outnumbered those of blacks. Knoxville, Tennessee, race riots, 1919. Same year. In August 1919, a race riot in Knoxville, Tennessee broke out after a white mob mobilized in response to a black man accused of murdering a white woman. Again, do you see the common theme here in most of these stories? Like I told you, and mind you, I didn't pre-read any of these. Mind you, I skimmed through it to see if it was actually 8 stories, and then I moved on. I didn't even read any of these, and I knew the common theme was going to be fucking white women. I fucking had a feeling. The 5,000-strong mob stormed the county jail, searching for the prisoner. They freed 16 white prisoners, including suspected murderers. After looting the jail and sheriff's house, the mob moved on and attacked the African-American business district. Many of the city's black residents, aware of the race riots that had occurred across the country that summer, had armed themselves and barricaded the intersection of Vine and Central to defend their businesses. 2 platoons of the Tennessee National Guard's 4th Infantry, led by Adjutant General Edward Sweeney, arrived, but they were unable to halt the chaos. The mob broke into the stores and stole firearms and other weapons on their way to the black business district. Upon their arrival, the streets erupted in gunfire as black snipers exchanged fire with both the rioters and the soldiers. The Tennessee National Guard at one point fired 2 machine guns indiscriminately into the neighborhood, eventually dispersing the rioters. Shooting continued sporadically for several hours actually. Outgunned, the black defenders gradually fled, allowing the gunmen to gain control of the area. Newspapers placed the death toll at just 2, though eyewitness accounts suggest the dead were so many that the bodies were dumped into the Tennessee River, while others were buried in mass graves outside the city. Let's see. New York City draft riots 1863. This obviously isn't in chronological order. The draft riot of 1863 was a 4-day eruption of violence in New York City during the Civil War, stemming from deep worker discontent with the inequities of the first fidelity mandated conscription laws. In addition, the white working class feared the emancipation of enslaved blacks would cause an influx of African American workers from the South. In many instances, employers used black workers as strike breakers during this period. Thus, the white rioters eventually turned their wrath on the homes and businesses of innocent African Americans and anything else symbolic of their growing political, economic, and social power. On July 13, 1863, organized opposition broke out across the city. The protests soon morphed into a violent uprising against the city's wealthy elite and its African American residents. The 4-day draft riot was finally quelled by police cooperating with the 7th New York Regiment. Estimates vary greatly on the number of people killed, though most historians believe around 115 people lost their lives, including nearly a dozen black men who were lynched after they were brutally beaten. Hundreds of buildings were destroyed, causing millions of dollars in damage. Up to 50 of the damaged buildings had been burned to the ground by rioters, including the Colored Orphan Asylum, which housed more than 230 black children. East St. Louis massacres 1917. Let's see. 1917, blacks were arriving in St. Louis at the rate of 2,000 per week, with many of them finding work in the Aluminum Oil Company and the American Steel Company in East St. Louis. Some whites feared a loss of job and wage security because of the new competition, and further resented newcomers arriving from a rural, very different culture. Tensions between the groups ran high and escalated when rumors were spread about black men and white women socializing at labor meetings. Oh boy. In May, 3,000 white men gathered in downtown East St. Louis. The roving mob began burning buildings and attacking black people. The Illinois governor called in the National Guard to prevent further rioting, and conditions eased somewhat for weeks. Then on July 1st, white men driving a car through a black neighborhood began shooting into houses, stores, and a church. A group of black men organized themselves to defend against the attackers. As they gathered, they mistook an approaching car for the same one that had earlier driven through the neighborhood, and they shot and killed both men in the car who were, in fact, police detectives sent to calm the situation. Yikes. The shooting of the detectives incensed a growing crowd of white spectators who came the next day to examine the car. The crowd grew and turned into a mob that spent the day and the following night on a spree of violence targeting black neighborhoods of East St. Louis. Again, guardsmen were called in, but various accounts suggest they joined in attacking black people rather than stopping the violence. After the riot, varying estimates of the death toll circulated. The police chief estimated that 100 blacks had been killed. The renowned journalist Ida B. Wells reported in the Chicago Defender that 40 to 150 black people were killed. That's a pretty large leap. 40 to 150? Like, that's an extra 110 people. Like, there's no accuracy in that number at all, those numbers at all. Black people were killed in the riot. The NAACP estimated deaths at 100 to 200. 6,000 African Americans were left homeless after their neighborhood was burned. Yep, so that was all 8 cases. And now, the common theme in the majority of these situations was what? White people lying, fabricating stories about white women being attacked, about white women being brutalized or raped, or even socializing with black people. This is what caused these incidents. But see, deep down, white people know what this war between the races is about. It is about genetic survival, like the ancestor Frances Cress Welsing has told us on so many different occasions and so many different lectures and in her books. White people are fighting for their genetic survival. Even if they do not understand it consciously, on a subconscious level, this is what they're doing. In almost every one of these instances, the white woman was the key to, and mind you, every time a white woman was involved, the white men gathered by the thousands to go into black neighborhoods and burn, loot, pillage, torture, rape, and murder. You know they did all those things because that's what the fuck they do. And this is what they will always do. That brother from Texas who took the water machine, who's been taking that water machine around the country. See, this is not a new occurrence. This is not a new set of circumstances for black people. When we do well, white supremacy gets angry. When we are productive, white supremacy gets angry. When they don't know what else to do, white supremacy lies and says that something happened to a white woman. That's all the fuck they need, which is why you got brothers like Bill Cosby sitting in prison for some shit that happened 50 years ago by the ugliest white bitch on the face of the planet, accusing him of it. She's a horrible looking woman. This woman is the bitch look like a cross between fucking Sigourney Weaver and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like, I've never seen a woman with such a square jaw before in my fucking life. And so far as Bill Cosby rubbing on her titties, I mean, please. But because she's a white woman, see, a precedence has been built up with white lies. A white woman was assaulted, get the Negroes. A white woman was touched, get the Negroes. We think a white woman was raped, go get them Negroes anyway. Bill Cosby's accused of doing something to a white woman that was asleep. He goes to prison. You know what I'm saying? You're a black man accused of touching or doing something to a white woman, your career is destroyed. Quintez Cephas. Oh man, I can't believe I'm forgetting the other brother's name. Quintez Cephas was I think he was going to a Midwest college. He was a football player. Had a threesome with 2 white girls. Voluntarily. They got drunk, they got high. He wakes up the next day. These chicks say they didn't have their faculties with them. They were too drunk to consent. He raped us. Because another guy on the football team that one of the other little white sluts wanted to get with found out that she did that. So they accused him of rape. This is what white women do. Stay the fuck away from white chicks. I just got to throw that in there. But as you guys can see, this is a reoccurring theme in America. This is a reoccurring theme in this country. This is what happens to black people when we try to better ourselves, even better the community. This is what happens. All this brother is trying to do is his due diligence. Be a good, the man is a vet. He's a vet. I don't know, Army vet or whatever. Doesn't matter. The man is a vet. You understand? Let me see. Let's read the caption. Just in case anyone had a thought that I was slipping off for a holiday, I'm in the shop working. I've started the redesigning of a special water production unit for Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and any location that needs water where the air temperature and humidity permit. The new units are something special, and I look forward to getting them out to you as soon as I can. I am a very hands-on person when it comes to designing my water generators. I wish everyone the best, and I'll be back in the field soon. See you then. A good man just trying to do good things to help people. And white supremacy is doing the same. Listen. You don't have to believe me. Look at history. Everything about our history tells you that this is what white supremacy does when black people do things to benefit other people and they're not profiting off of it. If they're not getting anything from it, they don't want you to have it either. You understand? They didn't even go to this man and try to see, hey, can we buy this machine from you, blah, blah. They don't give a fuck about that because they probably can do the same things as well, which is how the people who sabotaged the machine knew exactly what to do to damage the machine. They can do the same thing. It's the fact that he's cutting into somebody's wallet that's the problem. This is corporate sabotage, man. Corporate espionage. They could be working with this man to help pump out free water, but they'd rather flim-flam and scam the people, skin the people, basically. So again, black people, This is what happens. This is the history. You don't have to believe me. All you got to do is connect the fucking dots. All you got to do is connect the dots. There's a precedence for this. There's a precedence for this. Now, somebody will say, well, you don't know if it was white supremacy or white people or blah, 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 whatever, whatever. Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. Because this is what the fuck white supremacy always does. I mean, let's keep it 100, man. This is what they always do. This is what they've always done. Who else is going to be the culprit? I'm not saying that that a black person couldn't have actually committed the act, but who was behind it? Because black people live in Flint. Anyway, who do you think is behind it? Again, there's precedence for this. This is what they do. When we try to make positive moves, this is what they do. I'm not going to bring up other individuals like Nipsey Hussle or whatever, but this is what they do. This is the brother who was trying to do good things. All of a sudden, he gets murdered by one of us. They've gotten a little bit smarter with their tactics because they can always find the Sambos among us. You know what I'm saying? Even this imbecile is literally throwing his life away just to be a Sambo. But this is what happens. This is what we have to deal with. This is, sorry about that. This is reality in America for black people. So when I accuse white supremacy of sabotaging this man's work, there's a precedence on that. Now this is just this is just 8 situations here. The 8 successful and aspiring black communities destroyed by white neighbors. You know, this is just what some of the most popular occurrences have been. But this is the nature of white supremacy. Always remember that. This is what they are always going to do because they don't know any other way to coexist with anybody because they can't. We got to come together. We got to support this brother, protect this brother, help defend this brother and his invention. This is what we need to do. This is what the fuck we need to do. This man is doing this from the goodness of his heart. This man is doing something for people because they need it, not because he sees the opportunity to fucking make a profit. We need to rally together. We need to rally together. We need to rally behind each other. We really need to fucking stick together and come together like we used to. There is strength in numbers. And the reason why I think we don't is because, well, look at what they did to them. Look at what they did. Fuck what they did back then. We don't stop moving forward because they try to fuck up our progress. You continue to push forward. You continue to push forward. For all you scared Negroes out there, you continue to live in your fucking shell and hide in a hole somewhere while white supremacy continues to basically stick us with no Vaseline. I'm gonna have that shit. And it's about time that we all stood up like fucking men and protected our communities. Again, I'm not saying go off the deep end like I've done. Don't do that. Be smarter than me. You know what I'm saying? I just know how I'm going to respond and react in a situation if I'm not being treated fairly. I'm going to voice that shit. I'm going to talk. I'm going to say shit. And eventually I'm going to do some shit. If you put your, you know what I'm saying? That's just who I am. Be better than me. But we need to find some common ground, black people, and come together. Fucked up part is, those chicken sandwiches are back. I'm not doing another video on the chicken sandwiches. I just want to add this. Why in the fuck are black people losing their minds over Popeye's chicken sandwiches? The same people that will claim to be poor and don't have money to do anything will spend $100 million in a fucking weekend to buy chicken sandwiches. Black businesses are out here struggling. $100 million from the poorest black people. Popeye's Chicken squeezed out $100 million. Now, mind you, I come from a black community, of poor black people. Why the fuck do poor black children need $200 sneakers on, $100 jeans and shit like that, $75 t-shirts and shit? Anyway, This is what poor black people are doing. Spending hundreds of millions of dollars with companies that are poisoning you with shitty product. There's a black person in your neighborhood that fries chicken better than Popeyes, and you'll spend your money with Popeyes because even though the white man's ice will kill you, it's colder. Yeah, the white man's ice is it's colder. Like black people believe the white man's ice is colder. Like white man's ice is laced with cyanide. The black man's ice is made from water, and it's just as cold as the white man's ice, except the white man's ice will kill you. But because they're white, you'll still die from that. You still rather be killed by white man's ice than support a black man who's going to give you ice that's going to help you live. Like, that's what we do. You would ignore black businesses to keep dumping money into all these white industries while they show you absolutely no fucking respect. While there is an influx in the growth of the consciousness of black people, the generations that are the young people and a lot of the older people, I hate to say it, but there's a large portion of young people in a minority of older people. But I'm gonna say this: Chris Rock had a comedy special. I can't remember the name, but I think it was the bigger, blacker one. Blah blah blah. I can't think of the name of that shit. Anyway, he said something in there that I have never forgotten. And what he said was, there is a difference between black people and niggas. And niggas have got to go. And I agree with him 100%. There is a difference between black people and niggas. I don't give a fuck what nobody says about the word, what the word used to mean. I'm talking about what the word means now, how the word is used now. I don't care about all that nigga shit. I'm talking about what the word is being used as now, what it implies right now in the 21st century, in the year 2019. We have got to excommunicate the unsavory aspects of our race and culture out of the forefront. We have to separate ourselves from them. They want to be ignorant. They want to play into the hands of white supremacy. They need to be allowed to do that. But they cannot be allowed to drag the rest of us down because of it. I'm not trying to take the position of the boule. If you are a black person and you see there needs to be change, then you can be part of the solution. But if you're a black person who looks at our country and know you can think about itself, please get the fuck away. You are not helping. If you can't see what's happening in the world because you're lost in whatever the fuck you lost in, we'll holler at me when you grow up. You know what I'm saying? When your brain matures, holler at me then. But we need to get serious. We are at fucking war. White people have never forgotten. They've done the same shit time and time again. We need to stand up and fight back. We need to come together. We don't necessarily have to physically fight. We need to, an economic fight. Support black businesses. Support black industry. Support black people. That's the only way we are going to fucking win. I'm out.